the human immune system is incredibly complex. Like, other than the human brain, it's the most complex thing of which you're aware in the 2020s. In the 2120s, there are a few even more complexified systems like AI and some of the superhuman bodies that exist 100 years from your ish now. So let's talk about the immune system as it exists in the 2020s, and then how some of the technological improvements are going to make it way better in the early 21s. First of all, what you've got right now is three main lines of defense, immunologically speaking. You've got your sort of armor, which is just like the skin, makes it difficult for stuff to get into your body, the mucus, which grabs stuff as it's trying to come in, and then once it's inside, you've got your innate immune system, which is sort of like your built-in hardware defense, and then you've got an adaptive immune system, which gets better as you get older and learns how to encounter more kinds of different baddies and take them down effectively. Adaptive immune system is like a miracle of biological creation. It's really amazing. And what's so amazing about it is that it's got a stored repository of potential weaponry to deal with between 1 and 10 billion kinds of proteins. That means it's ready for stuff that hasn't even been invented yet, like a potential immunocompromising bacteria that you might find on the moon Europa when you're ice diving in the 2060s or whatever. Your immune system, your human immune system, would already be prepped to handle that potentially, because you've got these replicated, pre-packaged proteins which created the defenses they have by mixing and matching their own DNA, just kind of like randomly creating a process of evolution within your own system, and then filtering all of those weirdo creations through the thymus, which filters out almost 98% of them. So only 2% make it through, and what get filtered out are the ones that could potentially interact with your own cells and cause damage to your system. So the 2% that remain are really important later in the story. Let's go back to what happens when you get hurt. The first big line of defense for you is called a macrophage. If a human were a cell, a macrophage would be like rhinoceros size. They're pretty big, and they show up on the battlefield to eat incoming bacteria. They ingest them and they dissolve them in acid. Then you've got your neutrophils, which are like your warrior type class. They arrive on the battlefield and spew acid, and sometimes they make themselves explode and generally just kill oncoming stuff. Then you've got your complement proteins, which are a super cool batch of 30 wildly powerful proteins that were evolved about 700 million years ago. They're all the way through your system, like way up in you. You've got about 15 quintillion complement proteins in your body, and they do things like explode and latch on to bacteria, making them easier for macrophages to grab and eat. Then you've got what's called a dendritic cell. A dendritic cell is kind of like an intelligence officer. They're a spy. They get the intel on the enemy and they break it apart, and then they run through the system looking for a T cell from your adaptive system that has the right receptors to bond to those proteins and do some damage. So it takes them several hours of wading through T cells, most of which do not react, to find one that does react because it's prepped with those proteins that it's developed in the adaptive system. And it says, great, you're the one I'm looking for. And that T cell starts replicating and replicating thousands and thousands of times to come help on the battlefield. The other thing that happens in that process is that the B cells get activated and they start generating antibodies. They're sort of like these crabby creature cells that generate antibodies like from a factory, and the antibodies rush in and grab bacteria or viral bits so the rest of your system can attack it with its weaponry. Meanwhile, the system is flooding fluid to the area, which is why you get like a puffy bit when you're cut or something, or inflammation around a diseased area. So this is the basic picture of how it works. Of course, it's very, very complicated and much more intricate than that, but that's just like the basic thing that happens. You've got a bunch of different cells doing a bunch of different things, and those redundant systems deploy this ancient biological technology to attack basically any kind of thing that comes into your body, even if it's never seen that kind of thing before. And of course, on the flip side, there's a war of evolution going on as the bacteria and viruses can multiply themselves and find tactics that can evade your immune system's defenses. So it's a big, complex operation when you get sick, and mostly, hopefully, you don't notice, but of course sometimes it's very serious. And that's why lots of science and research is going into making this system better. In the 2020s, you're just getting started with like mRNA research, and you've only got a few little nanobots. You're learning about how to make batteries for very small things, but it's infant technology compared to where you're going. 2030s, 2040s, some of that biotech and nanotech starts getting a little bit better, and by the middle of the century you are much more able to program your immune response directly so that you can key in as a group, as a human organism, to what the major problems are, then tell people's systems how to respond. And then once you start putting these nanobots in lots of people's bodies, you can do that wirelessly, so you don't need everyone to go to Walgreens to get a vaccine. You can just push out this information and wirelessly inject it into people. And of course, that comes with massive security concerns, because that's a vector of attack, right? And it's a vector of potential disease. So all that stuff has to come along with very secure technological, logistical, administrative advances as well. But by the back half of the 20th century, which one are you in? You're the 21st, I'm the 22nd, right? So by the 2050s, 60s, 70s, you've got lots of different kinds of nanobots that can do lots of the things that these pre-programmed biological cells were doing. And initially that will work in a synergistic combination sort of way, where you're like, the nanotechnology will tell your body what to create, and then later it will like largely replace those biological bits. But also the biological bits will be getting upgraded, so you might get the new model of dendritic cell, or like the supercharged B cells that make better antibodies. And those two strands, kind of like, you know, a double helix, will intersect to create vastly more powerful and resilient humans, so that the humans in the 2120s will have immunosystems that are heavily technological, and they will be much better equipped to deal with even minor injuries and simple biological breakdown like aging, but also all sorts of standard diseases which just like won't bother humans at all in the 2120s. And they'll be much more ready for a rapid response to a biological weapon threat, which unfortunately will also become more of a real thing as this technology gets cheaper and more widely deployed. More people have the ability to make a very dangerous pathogen which could spread very quickly. In fact, it would be one of the main ways that a super AI would try to attack and quickly wipe out humanity, and they would probably use those hacking avenues to get into the nanotech in people's blood and make them explode or shut their systems down too. So there are lots of security worries that are worse than just a scratched thumb or a bit of bacteria in your eye, or the dead cells that you're pushing off your eyelids from the bacteria you killed overnight every morning. Tell us what you would like to know about biological systems, and we'll investigate that next. Meanwhile, take care of your own health by working out and eating right and talking more to your friends. Future forward, happily. See you then.